Good evening. We'll call this meeting of the Coeur d'Alene City Council to order. The clerk will note that all council is present, and we have an invocation tonight by Pastor Hartfield. Pastor, please come up and lead us in prayer.
Thank you for allowing us to do this. You pray with me. Heavenly Father, we recognize that all authority that we have has been given to you, to us by you, and for the honor of being given rule and dominion here on this planet. I thank you for every member of this council, for our mayor, for the offices they hold, for the decisions they make, and we just simply ask tonight that you'd give them the wisdom and the discernment to make decisions for the good of our community and decisions that would honor you. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Kiki, can you lead us in the pledge tonight?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, announcements, City Council.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. So I was going to say something, and now I'm going to say something else, which I may say the first thing in 2 weeks if nothing happens. But I did want to say, I was talking with Kiki, and we were discussing some of the housing issues. Surprise. And one of the things that came up was the Atlas Mill Site URD, and that the Urban Renewal Agency has decided to remediate Mount Hink. A few months ago, we asked them to keep us updated on the progress of what they were going to do there. But I think I have some concerns. I know Kiki has some concerns. So what I would like to do is to ask you, Mr. Mayor, to place a discussion item on our next agenda so that we can consider modifying the Atlas Urban Renewal Plan so that we can have some solid input on what to do in the Mount Hink area.
Certainly. Troy, can you make sure we get that on the next agenda? Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had one thing.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention that at an NIBCA joint government meeting today, our own Ted Lancey was the speaker, and he did a fabulous job, packed the house, talked about the upgraded building codes, and got some great support from that group in convening another meeting when all the final codes are adopted. So he really did a great job for the city, so I appreciate you, Ted.
Thank you. Seeing nothing else, I have a couple of appointments to Park and Rec Commission. I would seek your approval on one of them. You approved Warren Bakes a couple months ago, and he was just finishing out somebody else's term, and so now that's why his name is back up here.
Cool. Well, I would make a motion to appoint Warren Bakes and Jim Lean to the Park and Recs Commission.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed with nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of the consent calendar as presented and Resolution 22030.
Second.
We have motion and second. Discussion on the motions? Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yep.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we will move to public comments. We first have Justin O'Connell. Justin? Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I'm taken aback by the sudden fiscality tonight in regards to event fees, which I'd like to discuss. But first, I would like to present a warning. Many people are worried about Democrats becoming Republicans or Republicans becoming Democrats. The real threat to our democracy is libertarians becoming Republicans. I looked into this movement both locally and nationally. Many of these libertarians posing as Republicans follow the ideology of a man named Ronald Ulysses Swanson. Ron believed that government should not exist, and yet infiltrated the city of Pawnee, Indiana as Director of Parks and Rec. Here's what the Southern Poverty Law Center says of Mr. Swanson. Mr. Swanson bankrupted Pawnee through elimination of all taxes and programs. After the deincorporation of Pawnee, his diary was found and read, quote, "I will walk deeper into the belly of the beast if it means I'm able to further limit reckless government spending." Mr. Swanson played a big role in a Pawnee Emergency Budget Task Force which sold off City Hall as part of a fire sale of government assets. It was turned into a TJ Maxx. Mr. Swanson dreamt of privatizing the parks and having them run entirely by for-profit corporations like Chuck E. Cheese. It is this entrepreneurial approach to government which was ultimately Pawnee's undoing, and I sense the spirit of Ron Swanson amongst us tonight as it relates to event fees. Now, if we must discuss event fees, Central Planning did send me some materials. I'm advised to caution you, Mr. Mayor, against any entrepreneurial approaches to government. Today, we're discussing a reasonable fee increase to offset taxpayer costs, but the next thing you know, the city will be reserving the right to sell beer and wine at events and contracting with private security. Other towns and cities have increased event fees also, both recently and in general, while granting exceptions to local nonprofits. The beloved growth and planning agencies, for instance, who have made us newcomers feel so at home, as well as North Idaho Pride, would in such a case pay nothing. Ketchum, Idaho introduced a restrictive funding policy for all events on city property. A city event must be free and open to the public, be family-friendly, be managed through a contract for services or directly by the city. Now, Central Planning likes this next part. All funds accrued at city events must come back into Ketchum city coffers. However, I would recommend we expand upon the Ironman model. I believe the city pays Ironman between $36,000 and $60,000. I believe this is the right model for all city events. We would attract all the events, Coachella, Burning Man, the Boston Marathon. If the council adopts this model, I'd like to be the first to volunteer. I'm currently organizing an event, Enviroman, a potential sister event of Ironman. I do accept checks and money orders. The point is, if an event costs the city $40,000, but the fee for the event was only $250, don't worry about it. We can tax the rich. They have enough money. The last thing we need is the chaos of the invisible hand of capitalism to destroy this fine local town government. We must stay far away from entrepreneurial approaches to government, lest our beautiful town become the next Pawnee. Thank you.
Emily Boyd? Good evening, Emily.
I am Emily Boyd. I am the director of the Coeur d'Alene Downtown Association. And downtown Coeur d'Alene is a nationally accredited main street, and there are many factors that play a role in accreditation. And in light of one of the discussion items tonight, I'd like to highlight on one of those factors, which is events. Events play a crucial role in the success of downtowns. They highlight small businesses, bring attention to them. They create a sense of community for community members, and they generate commerce. Events bring in well over $150,000 people downtown each year, and from all over the world. And I think that's something that sets our community apart from others, is it's such a great place to come play, visit, and live. While impact varies substantially from business to business, we did a brief survey of our downtown businesses, and events such as Coeur d'Alene, Street Fair, 4th of July, and Ironman generate an increase on average of 35% in sales for small businesses in the core. Some of the businesses noted even doubling their sales on the event day. Many of these events have become a crucial point in their fiscal budgeting, and they count on that during the winter months. Increasing permit fees could pose financial difficulty for promoters such as the Downtown Association, who has taken on more roles when it comes to traffic control and security, porta potties, all of those fun event expenses. So I just ask that when you're discussing event fees tonight, that you keep in mind the benefits that events play a role for downtown and the community. Thank you.
Linda Coppice?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Linda Coppice, and I'm the president and CEO of the Coeur d'Alene Regional Chamber. And my primary purpose in being here this evening is to say thank you for your partnership for the recent 4th of July celebration. on behalf of the members of the Coeur d'Alene Regional Chamber and the business community, wanted to just again say thank you. We have a brand new team this year in our event planning committee, and we have lots of learnings, and we're so grateful for the participation within people of the city of all different departments and the support that they gave us during this learning year. Wanted to also say thank you to those of you who were in the parade. That's really important because having council members and our city leadership in the parade shows commitment to our community. It shows that you are a participant and that you're part of bringing kindness and unity and celebrating fun holidays and special events within the community. So thank you for that. And then lastly, I wanted to say thank you for generously sharing the revenues from the parking for your special event parking that day. As many of you know, costs are increasing, and that's across the board. We saw a decline in sponsorship dollars this year, perhaps due to inflation and rising costs from different businesses and what they're incurring. The revenue that you provided and generously provided to the chamber for this event not only increased the member or the community experience by providing really great fireworks show, but it also helped us to take care of some of those rising costs that we incurred this year. So overall, I just wanted to say thank you. Coeur d'Alene's a beautiful place. Emily mentioned a lot of really great information about the special events that we have here and the benefits not only to the business community, but to our community members at large. I know you're going to be discussing the potential of raising those event permits. I know it's a complicated topic, and I just was thinking, we have this special model for the 4th of July where there is special event parking, and I wondered if that was a consideration, to do for maybe some of the other special events, if that type of revenue might be a nice way to help offset some of the increasing costs that the city's experiencing. Just a thought, and I just, again, overall wanted to say thank you all for your support and for your partnership.
Thank you. Bill Green? Good evening, Mr. Green.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for you guys' all your service for the city. The overall theme of my comments is about communication between the city and the schools. So a couple of weeks ago, I was here at your meeting and heard the comment that there had been some effort to create some communication bridges that were still kind of ongoing. And so I went to a school board meeting right after that and made a similar comment and talked about the fact that there are often proposals for developments that come before you, and when they get developed, and sometimes that creates some need for more schools or more services for schools because there's more students. And so I talked to the school board, mentioning that that was happening and that you have some new ordinances that may allow the city to require some land set aside for parks or for things for schools. And I was encouraging them, or not that I can encourage them, I was suggesting that they reach out to you to get some meetings maybe to discuss how government and schools can work together when there are new needs for schools, when there are a lot more students that arrive on the scene. And so my main idea is to suggest that to you and see if you might reach out to them some more and get some kind of communication about that issue. And after the meeting was over at the school board, the superintendent came up to me and was speaking very positively about that idea and said he thought about that and really liked that idea, that he had sent one letter to the government, and I don't know what all came of it, but he's really wanting to pursue that. So I'm just trying to meet with people here and there and see if I can get them or encourage them to, when they're in a position like you are, like they are, to establish some initiative to have some meetings. One idea was to maybe have a meeting between the whole city council and the whole school board. And that would be really, I'm sure, an interesting discussion, because there are so many things that are coming up in terms of more and more people moving to Coeur d'Alene, more and more kids, and the schools have to be able to cope with how to meet all their needs. And the schools are great, they have great teachers, and I just think that some communication and cooperation, not that there isn't any cooperation, but more communication between the schools and the city government might increase that cooperation. So that was my idea. Thanks for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Okay. Next, we have a resolution approving an amendment number 1 to the engineering consultant services. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you for having me, Mayor and Council. Make sure I get the right presentation here. Trying, sorry. All right, good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm here to present for the amendment to the agreement with Keller and Associates for the Blackwell Island Booster Station. We originally entered into agreement on August 30th, 2021 to evaluate the site of our old booster station and evaluate of the new site. This is a picture of the old site of the Blackwell Booster Station that the city inherited in 1970. Engineering consultants came in. We installed a new distribution water main with the transmission line going up the hill on a newly acquired site. We worked on designs. This is a preliminary design of the plan that we would like to move forward with. It meets all the current codes with the fire flows. It also has some difficulty with the topography because of the hillside and the area that's there. This is a picture of a proposed site or a similar site on the new building. They would help manage the project management, geotechnical investigation, final station design, and they would also bid the project out, and they would also help us with construction management. This is the site of the proposed new booster station. I know this is hard to see. It is just outside the city limits right here. We have a new transmission line that runs up the hill that would serve the community. This is a little bit closer look at the site down the hill. This is our easement for the water line. This area here is the site that was acquired by the city for the new booster station. This is about the footprint of the site for the future booster station at the bottom of the hill. This is a street view of that site. So the transmission line was installed a year and a half ago, this is from the top of the hill going down the hill, that would help distribute the line going up. The old distribution line that was on the other side for the old booster station is on a narrow site with other utilities on it. It's in areas where we don't have easements. It's also in spots where we can't do any maintenance on it. So the new distribution line was installed. So I'm here to request approval for Keller and Associates to continue on with the contract that we entered in on August 30th, 2021, to increase the line item to not exceed $331,371 for the new Blackwell Booster Station. And I'll stand for any questions.
Questions from the council? Yes.
Just, you mentioned it, the site is right outside city limits?
Yes, sir.
Do we own it, and then would it be annexed in the land, or?
So the system was kind of force-fed to the city in the 70s. We acquired the system, we maintained the system, we're required to continue to service that area with the existing booster pump station that's there. It is failing. We did the transmission line, we moved forward. We can't get out of giving it away or even selling the system. It's cheaper for us to maintain it and put the booster system in. We have contacted other water districts in that area to see if they'd be interested in taking it over. The costs were the point of basically we'd be building all this for another system.
Did you have a question?
No, Woody has a question.
Woody?
Kyle, is this set up for any more expansion up there, or is this just supporting what's already there?
Just supporting the existing customers, not designed for expansion.
Okay. Thank you.
My question actually is kind of an offshoot to this, and that is, I remember previously we visited about the poor transmission line.
Mm-hmm.
Has that all been replaced so that we get rid of the leaks?
It is currently in use right now with the old booster station. that I showed you a picture before. The new booster station will utilize the new transmission line, and we'll probably keep it intact for at least a year, just as a backup, until we work all the kinks out of the new system, just because we only have one service line that goes to that hillside. If that station goes down, they're out of water instantaneously.
Thank you.
Real quick.
Yes.
Kyle, maybe refresh my memory. Wasn't there a land swap up on top of that hill that had something to do with this line being going in there, just like
So
within
we
the last
did
year?
enter an agreement with a contract developer that was developing that hillside. It was already grandfathered in to have one service to that lot. We negotiated with them to add 3 more services in remains for that parcel. Oops, sorry. Here. So it was in for this parcel here, so we could build a new booster station and this transmission line. So that was in trade for 3 additional services for those lots.
So then the question is, kind of maybe following up on what Woody said, is there potential that there'll be more requests further on past those 3 to connect to this water?
There could be requests, but we don't have any obligation to serve them. The only reason that we moved forward with serving those additional 3 lots was in trade for that parcel and that easement.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
You betcha.
Seeing no further questions, Council?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve Resolution 22031, approving Amendment 1 to the Engineering Consultant Services Agreement with Keller Associates Incorporated for engineering design and construction consultant services for the new booster station located at South Fairmont Loop.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
And we have some more services. Go ahead, Kyle.
Good afternoon. In 2012, our water comprehensive plan identified the needs for a future tank site on the northeast side of the city. As the city continues to grow, it continues to utilize existing infrastructure that's out on the prairie. That's where all of our wells are at. So we identified that we needed a tank on the northeast side of town to help continue to serve our existing customers. In 2016, we went into agreement with JUB to help us determine locations and designs and acquire the property parcels. We identified multiple parcels throughout the city which met our specific elevations so we can meet our pressure sustainabilities. So we identified a couple of parcels. We went into negotiations with a property owner, and we acquired a property at a very reasonable price on the end of Thomas Lane that you can see here. This is Thomas Lane, and this is the parcel. That's approximate tank location with appropriate elevations. Another picture of the tank site. As we entered into negotiations with this property owner, he had some certain requests on that property, and we've discussed this at prior council meetings, but one of his requests was to have a trail at a certain elevation that goes up to the concourse property to continue with the trail. He didn't want any parking on that site because he didn't want to upset any of the existing homeowners in that area. So he only wanted bicycle traffic going up there and or walking traffic, no vehicle traffic in the area. So part of the design in that, we will not have any parking except for our maintenance vehicles only. The planned transmission line would continue down from the tank site and then up 15th and tie into Shattuck to have adequate pressure in the area and flow into the infrastructure. We did ask JUB to help us with cost analysis for this project. So once we move forward with design and bid and getting everything moving forward, these are their estimated costs. It was a little bit hard at the time because we only got 2 responses back for estimates. We contacted multiple contractors. One came in at $7.7 million. The other one came in at $9.474. The Evans purchase property agreement went before council. JUB engineers helped us move forward with that and identified the site. We would like to move forward with a contract agreement with JUB not to exceed $1.322 million for phase 1 and 2. Phase 1 and 2 would be the tank site and the transmission main. And I will stand for any questions.
Woody?
So this is not a well. This is
No.
just a tank that's going to hold water.
Correct.
And balance the pressure on the northeast. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. $9 million for a tank and transmission line.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it cheaper to poke a well?
Well, the
just
aquifer's not
kidding.
on that edge of town.
Yeah.
So you balance out with your wells and your reservoirs.
Gotcha.
So you don't always need to add another well. You need to add the sustainability of the system to make sure that you can equalize the pressure in the area. One of the problems is the prairie holds the aquifer, so all our wells are out on the prairie. Pushing the water all the way across the prairie into downtown and on the northeast side, we're not gonna get a good production well out there. If we found a spot, we'd have to punch multiple wells out there, or in the area, and we'd be lucky to hit, the furthest east would be Honeysuckle, which is at the roundabout there, and it's a lower producing well, it's not one of our higher producing wells, so we'd have to punch multiple wells in that area if we could get the water quality and the flows to meet it. So it would be better suited to put a tank on that into town to help balance the water.
So the transmission line goes both ways. It fills the tank and empties the tank.
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks.
What's the proposed gallonage for that tank?
So the proposed gallon for that tank is 2 million gallons.
I know this is something, when I was in Troy's job, that Terry and I were talking about the necessity for that, so it's been in the works for quite a while.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of Resolution 22032, approval of Amendment 1, Engineering Consultant Services Agreement with JUB Engineers for Engineering, Design, and Construction Consultant.
Second.
I have a motion second. Any discussion on the motion?
The motion need to include the dollar amount?
Or include that you're not related.
It doesn't actually have a dollar amount, no.
So I guess we're good. All right.
Woody, I assume that motion would include the dollar amount as recommended in the city council agenda?
Yes, please.
Okay. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Kukin.
Special events. Thank you, Kyle.
Goodness gracious, we got a few things opened here, sorry about that. Why won't these go away? I'm not sure why. Okay. I don't know. We have some weirdness at the bottom of the slide. Hopefully we'll,
Press the escape key.
there we go. Okay, I'm switching hats for you tonight and now providing you a brief presentation. I'm going to go through it very brief and give you as much time as you need for your discussion purposes. But we thought as staff, we would get together and provide a little bit of history, a little bit of education on the codes, and some basic background information for you for your discussion. So the streets and engineering, parks, police, fire, administration, municipal services, and legal sat around and had this discussion and provided the information you're seeing tonight. So as you know, most recently, we had some discussion in 2015 about who's doing what for parades and special events. Way back in that time, we actually had the police department staff putting up barricades and taking them down and assisting with some of those security needs in all of our special events. So at that time, we moved that duty over to our Streets and Engineering Department and asked our Downtown Association and the Chamber of Commerce to take on a little more responsibilities with some of the additional costs of the porta potties, moving garbage cans, hiring flaggers, things like that. So one of the motions at that time for council was to find ways to increase revenue, decrease costs to the city while not hurting those events. So we felt like at that time, all of those things were moved in that direction. And then in 2017, we talked about some fee increases and made some changes there by about 20%. 2018, we brought some code amendments forward to kind of clarify the number of participants, what categories they would, fall into, and what procedures would be required under those terms. And then most recently, council requested that this be brought forward for discussion, and that's why we're here tonight. So the municipal code has several sections that deal with special events or large gatherings. So as you'll see on the screen, we have 4 specific sections that really pertain to those type of events that you see throughout the community and become known as special events, although we have one category that we really call special events. So under the Municipal Code 4.25, that's use of the parks and public properties. So those applications go through the Parks Department, and the fees are set based on the number of people in that gathering. So that is one section of fee that is specific to parks. So generally, if it restricts the use of a park substantially, the Parks Department would charge $1,000 for that day, and then it goes down from there based on the number of people. So 500 to 1,500 people is about $800 for that use. 5.30 are activities on public properties. So these are usually outside of the parks, same fee structure. It very rarely happens under this is specifically to sports tournaments and things like that. So you'll see this for the large activities when they're coming in and doing pickleball tournaments and things like that. Again, still going through our Parks Department. 5.44 is outdoor assemblies, and that really is for private events. So if there was a large concert somebody wanted to host on a large parcel in town, and they were expecting more than 500 people, they would need to come in and get a permit from us. We'd need to talk about a traffic safety control plan and kind of run it through the same system like we do special events. But that is on private properties, and really we only see this every so often for when you have that little kids carnival type thing that happens at the Silver Lake Mall. Most of the other events that happen in private parking lots are a lot smaller than 500 people expected, and so you don't really see this very often. But we do have that category out there, and they have to kind of estimate the number of people that are going to be attending in order to determine the fee. So this happens so seldom that the last time, I think it was when Kathy Lewis worked here as our deputy city clerk, and oftentimes she'd have them come in after the fact and make up the difference in the cost for how many people really attended. And then the biggie is Municipal Code 10.60, and those are the ones that involve closing the streets. So these are our parades and special events. And we have divided that up into high, medium, and low impact events. The Parks Department uses those same type of categorizations for their events and their parks as well. So we obviously have insurance and security needs that come with that. We have an internal city committee that meets on all of the high impact events and talk about the security and safety and traffic control for those events. And sometimes for the medium impact events, if there's enough street closures, we'll host one of those complimentary meetings. And we have the event sponsors around the table, as well as any of the large impacted companies like the Coeur d'Alene Resort.
Renata?
Yes?
Go ahead.
Wait, did we recently update that? I mean, recently, like in the last 8 years?
Yes, that was with the update in 2018.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so some of the annual events, these are actually all of our annual events, the ones that come in every year that we know they're going to come in. They usually book their event the day after their event is held, so they get on the books for the next year. It is first come, first serve. And so you'll note on here, we've indicated about 10 high-impact special events. These are the road closures. Some of these also affect the parks. You'll see that list in a moment as well. Some of these high impact, about 5 of them are sporting events, the marathon, the triathlons, the Race the River run. So 50% of these are those type of runs. Some of those are set up so well that we've done it so many years, it takes a lot less impact to our fire department for sure. And some of those, they just move people around town so they can have better access to response times, but they don't add extra staff for that time. You'll see it in the charging list. So really, when we're talking about the other 5 events, we talk about the 4th of July, Coeur d'Alene, the street fair, which is 3 days long, that is in conjunction with Art on the Green and the Taste in the Park, Ironman, and then the Christmas lighting ceremony. And then we have a whole host of low-impact events, and those are pretty small, short events that don't really require a lot of staff time as well. Then in the parks, you'll see they have a lot of annual events that come back every year as well. And some of those, like the Taste of Coeur d'Alene, is the same weekend as Street Fair and Art on the Green. The Coeur d'Alene Marathon also affects them. The 4th of July, Spring Dash. So when you're looking at those high impact, Live After 5, now that's been going so many years. I think in the beginning there was concern about fencing and how do we deal with the flow of alcohol and all that stuff, and we've kind of worked it out over the years. So that is kind of runs like a well-oiled machine now as well. So when you take out the ones that are also special event ones that we deal with in a large group, you have the Ales to Trails and the Brew Fest and the Live After 5. So we also asked our legal department to weigh in on what can the city charge for and what are some of the constitutionality issues we might run into. So I'm going to turn it over to Randy Adams to kind of step in and give you a briefing on that.
Good evening, council. I think council is already aware that the general rule is that a fee for services must be reasonable and cannot exceed the actual cost of the services rendered. It's important to understand that language because we can't use that statute to charge a fee to cover all costs that the city may incur on a special event. It must be costs related to the service that we're actually providing. So we don't get to charge for example, the costs that we would normally incur. The fee that is charged must be intended or used for that purpose, for the purpose of servicing that event. The fee can be uniform. You can have a flat fee and not have to calculate what a fee would be for each individual event, as long as it is roughly reasonable to do that. There have been some challenges in other states and other cities that because we're talking about First Amendment, you can't charge more than a nominal fee. Well, the Supreme Court has said, no, that's not true. You can charge more than a nominal fee, even in a traditional public forum. The other issue that has arisen recently because of some controversial events, you can't charge or can't base the fee on what the anticipated response to that speech might be. You can't say, well, this is going to generate a lot of negative response. It's going to require a lot more police presence. You can't base a fee based on that because you would be content-based. It would be a content-based fee, and it would be struck down by the courts. The other thing that we haven't done in the past, there are many cases, cities that either allow for reduced fees in certain circumstances or a waiver of fees entirely. Our statutes don't, or our ordinances do not cover that. If we choose to do that, there has to be in the ordinance, in a policy, some specific guidelines that our administration can refer to in determining whether to reduce a fee or whether to waive the fee. So I think those are the basic parameters, and if you have any questions about those, I'd be happy to answer them.
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Randy, the last section you just went over. Let me just give you, for instance, if the city were to host on city property right here in the park, if we allowed a vendor to come in and put on a major rock concert, like the Rolling Stones, which just wouldn't be a big enough park, but great concert, would police and fire would make some kind of an assessment on what that would take to manage that kind of a crowd. How that's not content-based because it's a rock concert, but how is that different when we know there's going to be lots of people coming to an event and we need lots of police and fire, whether it's a rock concert or it's a event that's going to draw a protest? What's the difference?
Well, I think they look at the sponsor of the program. So if in the Rolling Stones example, the extra policing would be because of the people coming to speak. It would be because they're creating a situation where it requires additional policing. In a situation like we recently had, where you have people outside of that event coming to protest, the courts don't want you to put that cost on the people putting on the event. It's just not fair, because either their message is controversial or it just is on the headlines of the day. So it really is, you look at the event itself, who's sponsoring it, and what that cost can be, not what people coming in to oppose it might cause.
Okay, so for our taxpayers to know, it could just be $30,000, $40,000 that is unavoidable, that the city just has to incur that cost.
That is kind of the cost of doing business. It's our responsibility as a city to provide police protection. We provide it whether there's an event or not. We certainly ran into it many years ago in the Aryan Nation parades that occurred for a few years, where the protesters outnumbered the Aryans 10 to 1 or 100 to 1. They caused much more expense in terms of policing and fire than the small group of Aryans who marched.
Thank you.
Yes.
Randy, I'm not sure if you touched on this, but other than one or two, are any of these items that you're talking about here things that can be done in a contract?
Yes, that is an option that the city has, to contract with a sponsor like we do for Ironman.
But is Ironman the only one that's a high impact event that we do a specific contract that outlines details and expenses with?
I believe that is the case, although we do have a contract for parking lots for the 4th of July. That's a smaller issue, but it's similar.
And for the Live After 5 in the park, I think he's got a contract.
That's how you work things out. If there's some issues coming up, you renegotiate within that for Live After 5? Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Renata.
Okay, I'll continue on. So we tried to put together some general expenses for you. This is a little challenging, and so you'll have to bear with us. This is just a for example type experience. We have lots of expenses from last year we could pull from. So what we did is we took that full day of the event, all the costs associated with police, fire, streets, and parks, and you'll see that daily fee, excluding all the overtime and comp time with benefits. So what you don't see in here is the normal day-to-day overtime or comp time. We've not put a code in our timesheets for staff to allocate every hour that's specific to the event or parade for that day. So these are just for examples, and we can do better going forward by creating that on time cards, and some of the departments may get a little more specific on these expenses. But as you can see, for the Coeur Fondo, it's a little less than what you're going to see for a 3-day street fair. It's a little less than what you're going to see for a 4th of July impact, where you have a parade in the morning and fireworks in the evening. So we have a whole big day of different events going on that cause staff to work 20-hour shifts. So these are just examples, and I know the people at home are going to have a hard time seeing this tiny font. It is available in the packet online if they want to go through and take a look, but really was just to give you an indication of which events are costing us more than others.
And so just for reference, these are all considered high-impact events?
Yes, yes.
So they're all charged $1,000 for the event fee?
These are the high-impact events, and some will be more, like for the 3-day event, they're charged per day.
Okay.
And then they'll have additional expenses if they're also in the park. So they're paying additional park fees as well.
Thank you.
So then in summer, we just gave you some highlights. We certainly can look at doing contracts for the top 10 high-impact events, or even just doing contracts for triathlons or marathons. You know, there's things, whatever you'd like to direct staff to kind of work on going forward. We also identified that we can kind of tighten our internal processes for how we communicate some of those higher to medium impact events in the parks with public safety, police and fire. If there's something going on in the band shell and there's vendors, was kind of a qualifier. They wanted a little more input on that. We can certainly start doing security deposits for utilization of city equipment, like some of the barricades and some of the cones that tend to walk off sometimes. And that's just, I think, people taking memorabilia home for some reason. And then we could also look at adding an application fee for reviewing large events. Even if the event doesn't get approved or move forward, we could still collect that fee for the use of some staff time for that review. We don't have that fee on the books currently, so that would have to be something to add coming forward if you see fit. So with that, I will open it up for your discussion unless you have something specific for me.
Christie, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Renata, some of these high-impact events that you have up here, the numbers, I guess, I don't think they're true to, how do I say this? For instance, let's use the 4th of July. You have as regular staffing what the cost would be, but we all know that that day, that's not a regular staffing day. It's all hands on deck.
Right, and so that day, anybody that isn't on their normal shift that's getting paid overtime or comp time, the overtime or comp time was included in that far right column that equals $56,000. So what you've done is we've just taken all staff time minus comp time, your general expense is the $33,000.
Well, that would mean that every day would be $53,000 for the police department. Am I reading that right?
No, it would be the $53,000 minus the 39.
Okay.
So the bottom number there is the total for all of those departments. Sorry to make that unclear, but the
Okay.
53,000 minus the 39 in overtime.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions for Renata? Okay, then we need to open it up for discussion as to how you'd like to proceed, council. Or did you have a question for Renata?
So, no, I was
Okay.
just gonna, so I think the reason this is here was that the taxpayers are compensating these events. And the costs, if we're only $1,000 for a day in the park or something, and it's costing more than that, I think that's why we came to talk about this. Plus the fact that the employees get 5%, 4% raises each year, so theoretically, it's a moving target.
Right.
And again, Dan, you kind of took the lead on this and looking at, where we're spending our money, and it's our taxpayers' money, and we spend so much of it, but then it's pretty obvious there's quite a few more dollars that are being picked up by the folks.
Oh, yeah. So that's the question is, we like the events, and we want to have them here,
Right.
but we don't want to have, the cost keep shifting to the taxpayer year after year.
Right.
I like the idea of contracts. I mean, I don't know how that would be implemented. I mean, I can see the big events here, which are Street Fair, 4th of July, and Carter Lane. I mean, those are the big dollar impacts. The rest of them are not that big. I could see us, how would we judge what a high impact? Is it based on this data? Is it based on, closing the streets and using the park type of thing? And then require that they have a contract, which means it could be negotiated, and they could, we could figure out at that time. But on the other side, I don't want to price everyone out of town. So, I mean, and I'm getting nods from downtown in the chamber. I do think we need to raise our fees, because as everyone has said repeatedly, the cost of everything's going up. So I think our fees need to increase again. And I have no problem with raising fees, but, impacting the taxpayer, if there's anything we can do to give them a break, that would be great. And I do like, I don't know if it was Emily mentioned renting out the parking lots for other events too. I mean, that's another possibility for raising funds. And that's, it's always going to be an issue, parking downtown. There you go. It's a great idea. Was that you, Linda? Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, there's a balance that needs to be struck, because as you talk about protecting the taxpayers, some of those taxpayers are also the people who have invested in businesses that need those kinds of events to be a viable and profitable business. And so their taxes are helping support activities that turn around and then support the businesses. And I was visiting today with somebody regarding our downtown. You can go around the whole Northwest, and I would say that you wouldn't find cities of our size, maybe 10 that still have a viable downtown. I would doubt that there are that many. And by viable, I mean that there isn't a bunch of shuttered buildings. It's an inviting place to be. You want to actually walk up and down the streets and enjoy the culture and the ambience and the different shopping opportunities. That's what brings people here. That's what keeps us here. So certainly, as you consider the fees, and Dan, you hit that on the head. We want these events, so well, for instance, that the event that brought all this up, there's no way that they could cover that kind of cost. And it wouldn't be fair to expect them to. So I think that there's also a difference between events, like that wasn't a fundraising event, as we probably should differentiate between events that are just gathering of people, which create a certain level of need for staffing, and events that bring in a bunch of vendors who are going to be making money selling products. Go ahead.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I think this did come up a long time ago, and I remember talking about it a number of different times. And I've created and hosted and been involved in a number of parades and a number of events. So I've been on the organizer side, and I know how tough it is to make them pencil. And I also know there's a lot of people who say, why would you charge parking for the 4th of July parade? And that's horrible. And we go on and on and on. But I don't think all events are created equal. They're just not. They're different in whether they're a nonprofit, whether they're a fundraiser, whether they're a for-profit, whether a participant pays to be there, or whether just a vendor pays to be there. So I do think a couple things. One is I'm very much in favor of having contracts that are negotiated for high-impact events. I think it could be beneficial to the event itself as well as the city, and those are where our big costs come from. Within that contract, I think you can put a lot of things in place, like is pay for parking an appropriate one? Does that work for this contract or does it not? I think you can put things like, are there a need to ask that event manager for privatized services so that we don't have to pay for additional things? And that, I think, could be worked out within the contract itself, too. I also think if we do have a better analysis of staff time, we can use that for specific information in the contract negotiation. I think we should probably consider for now limiting any new high-impact events until we get a handle on what we can do with the events that exist. Our medium and low-impact events, I counted 60-something in here, and only a few of them are winter. So that's a lot of events through the course of a summer. And it can just give the community itself, I want the businesses to thrive. I know they thrive on our events, but I also know that a number of years ago, when I was very involved with Convention and Visitors Bureau, we were really trying to get Coeur d'Alene on the map to get people to come here, and I'm pretty sure they know where we are. I think we have a great tourism business, and things have changed a little bit over the years. So I do think it's time to look at a multiple layer approach on how we put these contracts together so that they're good for the people who should come to the table, the Downtown Association, the chambers, the representatives of these events, and really say what is it that serves us all best and do it on a case-by-case basis. So that's my
Mr. Mayor.
starting event.
If I could ask, Kiki, what are your thoughts about having a measurement of, say, a public event like 4th of July versus a nonprofit versus, I mean, do you think we should have that kind of language in there too regarding the contract?
I don't know if you need to have the language that scales it out, but I think that as you sit down and negotiate the contract, those things would probably come together naturally as far as, I mean, there's a lot of nonprofits that make a ton of money, so I don't know if it should be a classification like that. But if you have a community event where hundreds of thousands of people are going to watch a fireworks show, it's different than, say, a road race, like where each participant is actually paying, and the spectator is the smaller percentage of that event than the actual participant, versus a food truck vendor and everybody they're feeding. So I think within the contract, you can kind of put together the line items as to where the revenue comes from and how it could be, what they think could happen that could support the cost to the city for their event.
Mr. Mayor, question for Randy. Can you codify that without making it arbitrary?
There will always be a certain subjective element, but yes, you can set out objective standards, I think. My other recommendation would be to include all of these in one place instead of sprinkled throughout the code. So I think that would make it a lot easier as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Dan?
Sorry.
Well, I think, I mean, this is good discussion, and I think it's good to have, some structure around things, but, and on a regular basis. But part of why we're talking about this kind of right now is because we had a high impact event, in the park, and I think we want to be careful also not to overreact to something that happens, once in a while, and again, and then we're worried, not worried, but anyway, keep things in context. Also, we shouldn't, because an event happened to draw controversial topics because it was a hot topic of the day or something, they shouldn't be, penalized, victimized because of that. So again, to keep things in perspective, don't write. Sometimes what happens is because something, unusual happened or something, and then we end up writing a whole new chapter rule book or something, and we've got better things to do than that too. And I think, having been here, born, raised, all of that, I mean, a lot of what we do, these things, these are our values. And so, I think the certain amount of cost of doing business, this is who we are, what we've become, what we've evolved into. And so that's a good thing. And, some of what we do, and again, they reflect our values, the different activities that go on. And so in general, I'm very happy with, with what we do. Could you have a contract and stuff, but again, hopefully don't overanalyze and overstructure everything. So just keep some balance on that, and some of, to charge because they've got food trucks or something, some reasonable thing. On the other hand, I have to tell you, personally, when there's an event and all of that, and they have some food truck or vendors, I frankly see that as a public service because, wow, we get to eat something, we get to see some unusual stuff, so there's some nice trade-offs, but anyway, like I say, don't overreact to unique situation.
Well, I just wanted to add one thing.
Just, Christy was
Okay,
next.
sorry. Thanks.
Well, I was just going to request, on here, the action item is to request staff, and I'm not making a motion. I think I can just request. Before we take any real action on event fees, I'd like to get some data from resort communities our size with numerous events, and what do they charge? I don't want to do anything arbitrary. I'd just like to know what other cities our size with these kind of events are charging.
It might appall you.
More?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to follow up with what Christie had said, because I didn't say it in my idea of a contract. But, and Dan, my position here with high-end events going through a process that's fair to everyone had nothing to do with recent activities of anything. I get that that's the cost of doing business, so I just want to be clear, it didn't have anything to do with that. I've been kind of on this for probably 6 years or so. But what I did want to say is what Christie had said was doing some sort of an assessment that says this is kind of where these fees come from for police, for fire, and adding in that time card communication piece that Renata had spoken about. That kind of gets the facts in front of who the event is, that says these are the real facts. And then the council would have the ability to approve a contract to say, you know, in this particular event, this particular situation, the data proves that this is worth this investment, or in another case, it may not prove that it's worth the investment in council's view. So the assessment piece was what I was going to follow up on.
So what I'm hearing, just to help staff, and I'm not sure we necessarily need a motion, but I think that we want staff to further review the concept of contracts when appropriate. Secondly, in terms of the fees, they should change with the inflation of costs, and they won't always then be $1,000 and $500. They may be $1,015 or whatever, but they actually will roll along rather than, and if you do that every year, you don't suddenly get hit with double the cost from the previous year. So I think that's what I'm hearing. I'm also.
I have cobbled a motion if you'd like me to read it.
Yeah, go.
Okay, good.
Go for it.
First, I'd like to say I do appreciate Justin's suggestion. I actually didn't want us to sell City Hall to raise funds. The feng shui in there is terrible. It'd make a good P.F. Chang's, but I don't think we'd want that, so thank you. Actually, you didn't want us to do it, so we're following your orders. I would like to make a motion, and before I do, Renata, is it pretty much accepted in your report what a high-impact event is? We don't need to define high-impact. You guys know what high-impact is.
It's actually set out in the municipal code fee structure, and it has to do with number of blocks, number of participants, and hours.
Excellent. So I would like to make a motion for three things. Number one is to have staff update the code, so combine all those things into a single chapter. Number two is to look into contracts for high-impact events. And number three is to revise the fee schedule. That is a motion.
Can I
I'd
get a
second
second
that.
to that? Did you second it?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second from Dan and Dan.
I just have one comment here, and I just wanted to say thank you to Randy. He put together that white paper for us, and it was fascinating how the city of Seattle calculates their fees for special events on police services. And just for everybody who hasn't read it, there's 6 different calculations, so it can be very complicated. So Randy, thank you for pulling that together as a comparison.
Is there
All those-
is there a possibility, just because we're still in discussion, that if staff would like to convene either some citizens or council members together to put more input on crafting of what this new language looks like? Or are we not at that point?
Well, just to do a quick litmus test, are you guys okay with that? I mean, that downtown, yeah, they're
Okay.
good. Good, thank you.
Like inclusion.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed with nay. Motion carries. Next, we have 2 public hearings, and if you wish to testify before this public hearing, you do need to sign up on that sheet that they've already brought up, which you wouldn't be able to sign up on. Is there anybody else wanting to sign up? Okay. The first public hearing is regarding a vacation. Mr. Grant, you have the floor.
Didn't we do this last month, Dennis? Okay.
are we doing
Oh,
this every
same
month?
neighbor?
Oh.
Same neighborhood, okay.
Yeah, you got it.
We're getting good at this.
How many more houses on this street?
12 and a half. All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. The applicant, John Hutchins, is requesting the vacation of a 10-foot strip of right-of-way adjoining the westerly boundary line of Lot 5 and Lot 6, Block 4 of the Casimir Edition plat. It's at 316 18th Street. It's that piece right there with the arrow pointing at it, and bounded with the color red. So, this requested right-of-way was originally dedicated to the public in 1907, and the vacation of the requested right-of-way would not have any financial impact on the city and would add approximately 800 square feet to the county tax roll. Although a minor amount, it would be a benefit to the municipality as tax revenue and to the landowner. This portion of 18th Street has an 80-foot right-of-way. By vacating the requested 10 feet of land, it would be more consistent with our typical 60-foot right-of-way south of Sherman. The right-of-way can be incorporated into the development for the adjoining property. All utilities are existing and in place. There is no foreseeable use of that right-of-way, and the development review team was informed about that vacation, or this vacation. I sent out 51 certified letters, and I did get a response back today, one. It was against. And that's it. So the recommendation is that the city council should approve the vacation action per Idaho Code, section 50-1306, and to vacate the property to the applicant, John Hutchins of Unio West LLC.
You have a question?
Yeah, for Dennis. So I think I asked this the last time we did
R12.
this. So, he's still, this is not in the street. This is basically
This
from
is
the
in.
curb in.
That's right. It's not in the street is not, and I did have a couple phone calls asking that very question.
Okay.
From a couple property owners, and it's not the street width, it's the right-of-way.
Right, so he's mowing the lawn there.
Yes, anyway, yeah.
And he will be required to put in a sidewalk since there's a sidewalk adjacent.
In this case, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Dennis, I didn't know whether, I'm sorry, did you call in Woody or myself?
I called you.
Okay.
I'm
Girls
sorry.
first.
I've
Yes,
been-
Kiki.
I want to be proper. I did have someone contact me about this,
Sure.
and I just wanted to clarify, because I'm sure they're watching, that what their concern was is that this changed the ability for what kind of structure could be built in there, if there would be like multifamily units going in there and that sort of thing. But it's my understanding all this does is just remove the property from the city to their ownership, but it doesn't change the zoning or any
No,
other
the
right to the
zoning's still
property.
R12, and it still has the 5 and 10 setbacks on the side, and 20 feet, I believe, from the front if there's a sidewalk, and 25 if there's not. Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's, yeah. So, no multifamily unless they change the zoning.
Or whatever, but whatever they could build there now, they can build there after this vacation.
That's correct, yeah.
Well, I had a historical perspective on this. You know why the streets were 80 feet in the early turn of the century? Because of horses and wagons being able to turn around. So now you realize when we go to 60 feet, the horses and wagons are not going to be able to turn around.
No horses and wagons down there.
And we appreciate knowing that.
I know. And with that, I would like to.
Well, no, I need
It's
to
a
open
hearing,
the public
Mr.
hearing.
Norwood.
Dang.
I'd like to open the public hearing, and we have 3 people wishing to testify. The first one is Marshall. Marshall, come on up. And then you're going to have to stay afterwards and practice writing your last name so I can read it.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, council members, I really appreciate your time and being able to speak on this hearing. The reason why these 3 individuals are here is we don't actually know what the vacation is for. We received certified letters that had no information. We had to figure ourselves that it was not the street, just as Mr. McEvans has said, or Evers had said. There's a lot of speculation on the street, and actually there was probably about 2 days where neighbors were standing outside trying to wrap our heads around it and see what the implications are. We have a lot of kids on our streets. We have a lot of Airbnbers. There's a lot of traffic. We have people with special needs kids. So a lot of safety was kind of a concern for us. Among our speculations, we wondered if diagonal parking was going to take place on the street. We wondered if they were going to be a proposed 3 units. It's a 2-lot section. Whether it would be a 4th unit built for like a 4th unit built on a 3-unit project. We even wondered if they were just trying to adjust the setback to come forward. We have no information. Clearly, there's a reason why they want this vacancy. In fact, if we were to go back to the map, the house 401, there's a trampoline in the front yard. Years ago, they actually asked, or next to the trampoline, they asked for a vacancy and they were denied. And I believe theirs was for a setback. So this gentleman's developing this property. He's filing and going through this trouble to vacate this land. There's obviously a reason he wants to do it. We have no idea what those implications could be. We're not necessarily opposed to him developing the property as he wishes. We just want to make sure that it doesn't disrupt the neighborhood or create a safety issue, whether it be from first responders or children running out in the street and someone not being able to see because the view is occluded. So I ask if you'd please postpone the hearing so that we can actually be informed on what the intentions are for this vacancy. I live right next to the property, and I have children all the time in my front yard from across the neighborhood. And they run across the street and they look both ways. But we also have, again, a lot of Airbnbers in our neighborhood, and they plow through. We have large trucks pulling huge boats going probably 35, 40 miles an hour. I want to make sure our kids are safe and our neighborhood is safe. And again, I'm all for this gentleman developing these properties and doing whatever he's going to do, as long as it's not creating a public safety issue or another hazard in a different way. And we would just like to be informed enough to be able to make a case if a case is necessary.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question for Marshall.
Sure.
So, is there anything that he would do on his property that would not be a deal breaker for you?
I like to say that I would prefer him to do whatever he feels would be in his best interest, as long as it's not harming the street in some way.
Okay.
So if he has something that's reasonable, absolutely.
So if he's just going to build a bigger house so he can move it forward 10 feet, that's okay with you?
I'm totally open with that,
All right,
but I just want to make sure that we can be informed. We were sent these certified letters for a reason.
Right.
But they really didn't give us any information.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Brian Bosch?
Mayor and council, thanks for letting me talk. So I am also a neighbor. I was informed of the vacation by Marshall. My family splits time here. We're really grateful for your ADU and development codes. We built an ADU in the back of this house that I own, 312 South 18th Street. Marshall lives at 314 South 18th Street. He's at school at NIC on the GI Bill. His family rents there, and my family has a chance to come back and forth. My kids will be the 5th generation Kootenai County residents, and we've been in Coeur d'Alene for the last 40 years, visiting family and friends. I have 2 ways of coming about this. I also develop properties. I build homes. When I see notions of vacation, when typical residents don't understand what that means, to me, it's understood that the city is relinquishing rights to a portion of land. In this case, they're relinquishing public land to the benefit of a private developer. I've been there. I understand the 60 feet is typical. What's really neat about our street is it's 80. It's why a lot of us like to live there. My daughter is one of those that has special needs. She likes to run out in the street. She's hard of hearing. She doesn't have her hearing aids in. She can't hear trucks. That extra buffer zone is a safe feeling for me. Having that extra 10 feet to look all the way to Mullen or all the way to Young is important. I'd also like to mention there's 7 new houses on our side of the street. None of them have asked for that vacation. None of them have needed that vacation to build a single-family home that's sold. The property is one of the biggest on the street. I can't imagine that there's any hardships to developing this property. My concern would be as a developer would be pushing the front setback, taking that 10 feet and actually pushing that house forward, where I can now look all the way to Mullen and Young. that would go away. It's right next to me, so the house would come 10 feet forward and potentially have another 10-foot porch. Right now, our whole street is lined at the same distance, including all 7 new houses that have been built on my side. So it looks as though this council is ready to approve this vacation without hearing from the public. I would just ask potentially if there is going to be an approved vacation, maybe there's conditions applied to that vacation. The extra 800 square feet, if it does go to benefit, we know it's R12, doesn't mean it's multifamily, but that extra 800 square feet could develop into multiple more units. It actually could develop density. While it wouldn't change zoning, there is that potential impact. So I'd ask for condition that if this developer got that 800 square feet, the city's portion of that 800 square feet is given to the private developer, can't be used to increase density. It's one thing to want to build a little bit bigger house, and that's okay. But if it means more multiple units and more cars coming down our street, then I would be concerned that the city relinquishing rights to that for that benefit would actually be a detriment to the public use of that area. He's not actually mowing the grass right now. They tore down Dan's house. They tore down all 3 of his trees. And so there's actually nothing left. It's just a big vacant lot. And on that note, if we could put a condition in that he couldn't push the setback forward, maybe he could, use the existing setback as the rest of all of our neighbors have had, that would be great. And it'd actually make us feel a lot safer about our kids running across the street. There's about 12 young ones under 13 just in our 5 houses. So thanks for your time, and let me know.
Thank you. Thank you. Todd Butler?
Hello. I was in front of you guys last year. I was going for the same kind of vacation of right-of-way, and I just wanted to provide my support for this one because I feel it is an opportunity that everybody who lives on this single stretch of property or this single street should take advantage of if they so choose. So Marshall and Brian have the same opportunity to take advantage of that. And Brian, I don't know if you're going to do something with the front house, but it's that same opportunity. And again, I just want to point out that we're not asking for anything. These guys are not asking for anything special. This is a process, as Dennis outlined, is in the city code that you can request this vacation of right-of-way. If the city feels there is no need for this right-of-way, they can offer a vacation. This doesn't impact the street at all. There will be no changes to the street. All it does is it gives that property that additional 10 feet on each side, which is to bring it down to a similar 60-foot right-of-way, which is the entire rest of the southern. Everything south of Sherman Avenue is a 60-foot right-of-way except our stretch of 18th Street, and there's one other partial block, I believe, on 16th Street. So the biggest impact is it changes the front property line. It adds 10 more feet, which would allow a person to add 10 additional feet to their house. 2 houses south of this, there is already a non-conforming house. It was I've lived on that street for 30 years now. I've seen a lot of changes. The house south of me is non-conforming. It's already pushed past that. It's into the setback. So it's not like it's a huge impact. And I wish I have been gone for the last month, but I wish I would have had the chance. If you did look at the one that you did approve on last year, that house has been built, and you really can't tell an impact of that ADU, in my opinion, sticking out 10 feet more than the adjacent house. So I'd just like to say I feel like it's a minimal, I feel like it's zero impact on safety, and I feel like it's a right that everybody has to exercise, and I hope you approve this because I would like to come back in front of you and request it again on my behalf. So anyway, I just want to show my support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. That, I will close the public hearing. Those were the only people signed up to testify. Dennis, can you provide any additional comments regarding concerns that you heard, or?
Sure, just a few comments. The certification letter is required per state code. I personally would rather not send a certified letter because they're $7.35 a piece. But per state code, we have to send out a certified letter. And that does cause people to wonder, why am I getting this letter? So there is that fact, which I get phone calls sometimes, why am I getting, they're a little scared when they get those letters. And so that's the reason for the certified letter. Also, per state code, you can't condition a vacation. Let's see, one of the other concerns, safety. There's no change in the street. It's the same.
Increased density?
What?
The increased density?
Yeah, it's R12 either way, so it won't affect the zoning of that. So it's still going to be single family. Let's see.
Yeah.
Was there any other ones?
Well, just, I don't know if the content of the letter is exactly
Yeah, gotcha.
prescribed by code, but I would also say, I mean, I think that's a very valid concern. I mean, you get the language that we don't talk in ordinary conversation most of the time. So it's like to have some kind of an introductory or some kind of a paragraph saying, yeah, this is what's up with this, and anyway, so if you
Sure.
could address that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is some information that we could add to this if it made it simpler by adding the zoning, explaining. We try to keep it as simple as possible, but I understand that it's actually complicated just to look at this picture and maybe not understand what it means, and then the notice itself is with a legal description. You have a legal description that they're all complicated no matter what, and so but those have to be a part of it per the state code, because when you go to record it at the county, that's what they need. They need that legal description so they can update the maps, which they provide us for our city map. So there is the legalese part of it, and that's why the letter is the way it is, to keep it simple for taxable reasons, for legal descriptions for the county, and so forth. But also, with your concern, I mean, I'd be more than happy to add a letter that might explain zoning with this public hearing. I don't know if that's, I'd have to talk to Randy to see if we can do that.
And again, I think that, I mean, the exact,
And safety
what
and
has
all-
to be there for recording and that kind of thing is one thing, but just kind of the general introduction of what's this about that doesn't tie, anyway, I can understand if you don't deal with this stuff on a normal, regular basis, yeah, you wouldn't know, and I think we heard a couple, I mean, it raises concerns. And if we can eliminate, some anxiety just because of the
I would love to eliminate.
that would be good.
Yeah.
So-
I would love to eliminate the certified letter, because that scares people right off the bat. And I'd love to eliminate a lot of things in there, but usually I have to, I have to follow state code, but we might be able to add some language, although the zoning is in the public hearing notice. It says R12 on there, I believe. I'll have to double check, but anyway.
Go ahead.
Just quickly, Dennis, on that letter, is there contact information if
Yes.
someone has a question?
Yes, there is.
So-
And I did receive 3 phone calls.
So that's how they could get their question?
That's right, and they
Okay.
get the information, and that's another thing I was gonna add, the phone number is on there, and we can answer any and all questions. And I sent, per state code again, I have to send the letter out 14 days ahead of the well, actually, it's only 10, but I usually send them about 14 days ahead of the public hearing, so there's time for neighbors to call me and ask any question they would like. And so there's also 2 notifications in the paper, 7 days before a public hearing, 14 days before the public hearing, in the legal part of the Coeur d'Alene Press.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. Randy, is what the person is going to do with their property germane to a vacation?
No. The Supreme Court has been very clear. As Dennis mentioned, you can't put any conditions on it, and in the same case, the court said the only consideration is whether the city has any use for the property.
Right, so that's from our perspective, is that since there's already sidewalk there, not sidewalk, but that's already land that's, he considers part of his property. And that, it's not going to affect the streets, it's not going to affect, we don't have any utilities under there. Basically, he's already considering his property. We can guess what he wants to do with it, but as long as, and I know that Marshall brought up the issue of public safety, as long as it's not impacting public safety in a negative way, which is not, that's really the only basis we have to make our decision.
Yeah.
Christie?
Dennis, how soon would the applicant need to put in this sidewalk that's contiguous?
With a building permit. And I believe he just did submit a building permit, just, I think, a week ago.
And can you remind council, how many other on this street have we vacated in the past?
Well, I don't have an exact count, but I would say, I think there's 2 or 3 blocks. So, and we've had maybe 4, 5, really, I believe that have came up. So there's still a lot more out there. Potential
Thank you.
vacations.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. You've heard the public testimony. You've heard further explanations by staff. There's a motion before you. How do you wish to act, council?
Mr. Mayor, we've had testimony from our staff that really, for your benefit, tells us what we can make our decision based upon, and I hope you were able to understand some of that, as we have. So I will make that motion, but I have to find it on my, here we go.
Before then.
This one?
No, one more back. We're dispensing with the rule.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I would make the motion to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill number 22-1009 once by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Wood?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Would you please read the title?
Council Bill number 22-1009, an ordinance of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, vacating a portion of 18th Street right-of-way located in the Kazmaier Addition, recorded in Book B of Plats at page 129, Records of Kootenai County, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, generally described as that 10-foot wide strip of land adjoining the westerly boundary of Lot 5 and Lot 6, Block 4 of said plat, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, and providing for the publication of a summary of this ordinance and an effective date hereof.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to adopt Council Bill number 22-1009.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Wood?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Motion carries. We have another hearing regarding an annexation.
The applicant is Aspen Homes Development LLC, and they're requesting an annexation of 5.9 acres in conjunction with zoning approval from County Ag Suburban to R5. Property is located at 1808 North 15th Street, and legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on July 2nd, 2022, and all other required notifications have been made. Here's a location map indicating where this property is located. You see it's highlighted here in red. This is 15th Street. This is Interstate 90, and the green line indicates the city limits. Here's a close-up aerial view of the property. You see it's highlighted in red. This is 15th Street. The applicant is proposing to do a development on the lower part. There's some high topography located here, as you can see in the bird's eye view looking north. And here's our bird's eye view looking east. You see how it slopes upward in this area and lower along this area. The property is located in the city's ACI, and the applicant has submitted an annexation map indicating the meets and bounds of the property. The existing zoning is ag suburban. You can see there's R3 to the north and to the east, this location, with a single-family dwelling located here. There's R17 across the street with R12, C17, and R17 to the south. The applicant is proposing R5 zoning, and the R5 district is intended as a residential area that permits single-family detached housing and a density of 5 units per gross acre. There are 4 findings that need to be met in order for an annexation to be approved. Findings B8 through B11. The first one is B8, that this proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan indicates that this area is in the single-family neighborhood place type, and those place types represent the form of future development as envisioned by residents of Coeur d'Alene. Place types will in turn provide the policy level guidance that will inform the city's development ordinance. Each place type corresponds to multiple zoning districts that will provide a high level of detail and regulatory guidance on items such as height, lot size, setbacks, adjacencies, and allowed uses. So the comprehensive plan for the single family indicates the type of zoning districts should be R1, R3, R5, R8, and MH8, and the applicant is proposing R5. Comprehensive plan and goals objectives as it relates to this annexation request. There's 3 slides. I won't read them all, but staff report has them listed on page 13 and 14. It's community identity, environmental and recreation, and growth and development. Finding B9, that public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. This application has been routed through the city departments for their review, and that each department has indicated there are adequate public facilities and utilities available and adequate for the proposed use. Finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. As you can see, this is a topographic map indicating the topography. Each white line indicates 5 feet. The tighter the line, the tighter the slope. It's the closer line. So as you can see, this is the significant slope area. The applicant is proposing to keep this in an open space, natural area, and this is where the proposed development is to be built. Some site photos of the property. This is on 15th Street looking east. This is on the northwest corner looking east. This is on the central southern border looking northeast. This is on the northern section border looking north. This is also looking north. This is standing on the center of the property looking southwest. And this is on 15th Street looking south. The last finding is finding B11, that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land uses. The city engineers indicated that proposed development could generate approximately 119 trips per day with 9 a.m. and 11 p.m. peak hour trips. The Streets and Engineering Department has no objection to this annexation. Existing land uses, you got civic uses to the south and to the west, single-family use here, and also single-family uses across the street with also some duplex housing. There are 14 recommended items to be included in the annexation agreement. They're listed at the end of your staff report. I won't read them all. And the decision tonight is the annexation of 5.9 acres in conjunction with zoning approval from County Agriculture Suburban to R5 zoning district. You will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions for Mike? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, on the annexation map that you showed earlier, it's like the seventh slide or so. It's just the plat map. There you go.
Okay.
All right, so I see for the parcel here is this backwards L shape. There's, actually looks like there's two different lots there.
This is, they're going to propose to put this in an open space tract.
That's not my question. When were these two lots joined?
They're not joined at this time.
They're not joined
This
at
is
all.
one lot.
Sorry, what?
It's one parcel that's being annexed, and this annexation map that they submitted kind of indicates where they want to do the development and where they want to do the.
Did this
open
come from the
space.
county, or this came from the applicant?
This came from the applicant.
Okay, so they were the ones who split it. There wasn't there wasn't a joining together? They didn't short plat these together?
This is for illustration purposes only. So the annexation of the meets and bounds are this area, you can see this, and this just kind of indicates with the future, what if it is annexed, this is how they would want to separate the open space with the developable part of the property.
Do they need to do that? I mean, my question
They
is, why
don't have to. It
doesn't
could be an easement or a perpetual easement back here. That hasn't been done. That's going to be worked out in the annexation agreement.
Well, I'm just curious why it didn't just say one R5 there with the total acreage, and it just has the two separate. It looks like two different lots to me.
They kind of want to illustrate that they're not going to be building on any of this part in the R5. And no development will be done in the hillside or in the sloped area. This will remain in open space.
Okay, the other question I have, okay, no, they can't build on the slope, but the place type for this is listed as single family. So it's within the, right there, single family neighborhood. But in the applicant's narrative, they refer to it as a multifamily unit.
That is correct. They went through Planning Commission last month in June and got approved for a PUD, which will allow for 25 units to be built on this lower section, which we were just talking about, which equates to 5 units per acre.
But it says single-family neighborhood in the comp plan, and they're putting in a multifamily development.
That is correct, but they also are allowed to.
I know there's a but there, but I'm just
apply for
focusing
a
on the first
PUD,
one.
which they did apply for that.
Right. Okey dokey.
Go ahead.
PUD, didn't we just change the rules for PUDs that they have to conform to what plan they're going to do?
Yes, that plan was, through the PUD process, they submit a site plan, and that site plan is approved, and there's conditions attached to that site plan and that PUD.
So is this the first time we've used that PUD conditions?
We've always
to-
used conditions on the PUD,
Okay,
yes.
so they have to stick to it.
Yes.
Okay. Held to the plan, open space, no hillside ordinance impact.
If it's not in the hillside, no, because they're not building in the hillside.
Okay. And can they change the plan
Not without going back to Planning Commission.
through the PUD?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
So I think Woody was referring to the developer agreements, but that's outside of the PUD.
That is correct.
And so this didn't trigger a developer agreement to have them when they.
This
came
does
forward
not.
with this.
This does
Okay.
not trigger.
And then this space that they're planning on keeping open, I'm assuming it's not public open space, it's private open space.
It's private open space.
Christie, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's all right. The photo with the bird's eye photo, that land next to it is owned by the city, is that correct? That, right there?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And I don't.
It's a small strip owned by this Eagles Event Center.
Eagles, right. All right. And I don't know what we will decide to do with that someday, but I just don't know what the impact could be to
Well,
have.
Our property is zoned R17
Okay.
to the south.
Mr. Mayor, I can answer that for Christie. We can't do anything for it because it's in a floodplain. We
Interesting.
can't do anything there, which makes me wonder whether this parcel is in a floodplain as well. Wasn't in the staff
There
report.
is a portion of this in the front that's in the floodplain, but a very small portion, and I'm not for sure how far this is in the floodplain either, but there is some portion of this in the floodplain as well.
How many acres are there actually they could build on then, if they're going to leave all of the back portion open?
1.3 acres,
1.3, and they would
Total.
put 25 units on it?
that's correct. But it's
Just to the-
5.9 acre parcel.
Just to the north, there are multifamily, aren't there?
That is correct, Best and
The
15th.
adjoining property has multifamily? Or is it a little further north?
It's just a single
No,
house.
this is all county. The only thing adjoining this is a single-family residence located right here.
Well, I'm just thinking of further north.
But further
on-
north, there is a multifamily on Best and
There's a whole bunch of
15th,
them
yep,
on
and there's
15th
multi.
there, south of,
Yep, that's correct. Let's see if I have that here.
south of Best. Other questions right now? Okay, I will, thank you, Mike. I'll open the public hearing.
The applicant is here to make a presentation.
Okay?
Do you want me to do big screen?
Gordon? Good
So
evening.
I'll still need to swear in the applicant, sir. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's good to be here tonight. Appreciate your time. Let me kind of dive right into some of the questions that you had. And I'm going to paint a little bit of history for you, and hopefully that'll explain how we got here. So we came to the Planning Commission the first time with an R17 in this lower area and an R1 in the upper area. And in general, this is a unique piece, because the only portion of it that can be developed is this lower portion. The rest of it is a steep rock knob. So going into it, we knew that that area was going to be an open space. We actually had discussions with the city about giving that open space to the city, but Bill felt like there really wasn't enough public benefit because of access and maintenance to warrant that. So we came back and we'll dedicate it as public open space, and it ends up being 70% of the property, so that that knob stays natural as it was. When we went to the Planning Commission with that plan, they weren't real comfortable with the R17. That allowed the multifamily, which is really what's driving this, is, provide just housing for the housing shortage. That's what we're doing here. That's really what's driving this. And this piece is unique enough where we think this proposal will support that. The original one with R17 would have, but because of the other uses that the R17 allowed, and because the original proposal really didn't lock in that open space, in concrete, the commission said, yeah, we're not really comfortable with it. So we came back, met with staff, and staff said, well, what you might do is a PUD, because a PUD is really a development agreement of sorts, and it locks in the site plan that we had to go back and basically lay out a site plan that is part of the PUD, and it really can't be changed unless the Planning Commission approves that change. And again, the other part that satisfied the Planning Commission concerns on the open space was the PUD locks in that larger piece as open space. And yes, it's not public, the city didn't want it, but it's still there as open space. It'll remain in its natural condition as it is today if this project moves forward. So we came back with the R5, which, And in conjunction with the R5 and the PUD, we have the site plan. That's the other part that the Planning Commission wanted to know, hey, what are you really going to do? And we'll put some conditions on it to make sure things go forward in an orderly manner. And that was approved unanimously. But I would say that even with an R5, because of the unique features of this property, an R5 without a PUD, you couldn't implement even an R5 density. So if, again, council's looking at strictly just the zoning, and I get that, so just an R5 on this piece of property, because of the physical constraints, you're probably in a different scenario. Without a PUD, you probably wouldn't get more than 2 or 3 homes at the most. And that's because of the shape of this, the lot size, the frontage considerations. If it came in without a PUD, again, the R5 wouldn't allow more than 2 or 3 homes, period. So that's something to consider as we go forward. So the R5 really goes hand in glove with the PUD, and again, it locks the site plan in, locks in the open space, which is a key factor in this proposal. Just a few other comments. I can go to the site plan. Again, the PUD, I understand it's not the purview of the planning of the council, but I think it goes hand in glove. So I'm going to give you a little sneak preview of what the Planning Commission approved. This is what we came back with. This general site. This allows 25 units, and yes, it does seem like a lot for an acre and a half, but honestly, just up the road, Latitude, another project by Aspen, they got 20 on about the same amount of acreage that we did here, and it was tasteful. The structures are nice structures, and it's a good housing project. So this basically is the site plan we presented to the P&Z. And part of the PUD requirements is you have to have usable open space, so part of that PUD will require that we develop just a nice, little viewing area with access from the parking. It won't go up the hill because, quite honestly, you can't get up the hill. You can't walk it. It's so steep. So we did what we could down here, and that they were fine with that. So that's a sneak preview of the site plan and what we're doing. But again, just the R5 alone, we feel even without a PUD is appropriate. You saw staff's evaluation of the surrounding zones, R17, R12, duplexes. 15th Street has numerous places that have multifamily on it. It's a collector. It's the right place to put, higher density development. Staff's testified that we have the available utilities for it. It can handle the traffic. Pretty much, again, we feel like the R5 is the right zone, and it goes hand in glove with the PUD. I think really that pretty much covers it. We've looked at the items to be considered in an annexation agreement. We don't have any problem with that. I guess I would probably just close it out by saying, historically, when you look at these little Swiss cheese pieces, especially this one that fronts 15th Street, there's been an historical argument to say everything else being equal, zoning and whatever making sense, that there's an impetus to annex some of these Swiss cheese pieces because they use city facilities, street sweeping, drainage, street lights, emergency services response, police, and they don't pay for any of it. So again, everything being equal, I don't think I'm here to say, gee, that's why we should do it. I'm not. I'm just saying it's a consideration that historically has been argued in favor of annexations. I think that's about it. Yeah.
Questions for the applicant? Woody?
So, Gordon, it's good to see you. Ingress, egress, all on 15th Street? There's nothing through the park or anything?
So, good question. Thank you. We originally wanted to take ingress and egress through the Eagles' existing driveway, not wanting to add another access on 15th Street. That door was closed. It was pretty much slammed shut. They were not interested in sharing this driveway with us. So we tried, we'd like to, but that door was closed, so this project will have its own access onto 15th Street.
So it's pretty well closed in, one way in, one way out.
Yeah, it's just,
Okay.
like you saw the site plan, it's just parking lot.
Gotcha.
You know.
Thanks.
In fact, while I'm on this, if I could jump back and say, Councilman Gookin, again, that line that you saw, I agree, it's a little bit confusing. This is a single parcel, but in generating, the original request that showed where the open space was going to be and how much was going to be developed, that line just stayed on the exhibits and we never took it off. That's really the gist of it.
Other questions? Oh, yes, go ahead.
So I had two things. One is you had said that there was another development right up the road. I'm kind of familiar with that one. It's grayish, slant-roofed houses called Latitude. So its acreage is less than this, and it has, or it's more than this, and it has fewer units than this?
No, the acreage is about the same, but it's got about 22 units on it.
So this has more units than that?
A few more.
A few more. And then are these going to be, not that it's relevant to the zoning or the annexation request, but out of curiosity, are they going to be condominiums for sale or apartments for rent?
I believe it's just apartments at this point. Yeah, we don't have any plans to condo it. That would involve a whole nother process.
So I'm going to ask the question because it's what I do. Is there any consideration on valuation in here or anything to provide for local work or workforce housing in here?
We haven't up to this point.
Okay.
Seeing no further questions, thank you. Eric Campbell is in favor and does not wish to testify. Lynn Kopp-Fulbrook wishes to testify and is opposed. Lynn? Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Good evening, Mayor and Council
I'm sorry
members.
to interrupt. I need to swear you in first, so.
Of course.
Again, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
That's okay. My name is Lynn Fulbrook, and this is my husband, Terry. We live at 1828 North 15th Street, and we share a property line to the north with the 1808 property, which is owned by Aspen Homes. So if you look at page 91 on your agenda, you'll see that our property is to the north in the green. We have always been opposed to the property at 1808 North 15th Street being rezoned from agricultural to first R17 and then R5. We are additionally concerned about the proposition to build 2 townhouses and 1 apartment complex next to our property and in the neighborhood, and here are the reasons why. During the June 14th Planning Commission meeting, which we were both unable to attend because I was hiring people for school positions, Commissioner Lutrop specifically asked Hillary after her presentation if we were notified about the new rezoning plan. And I will quote Hillary here. Yes, and I believe the project team met with the homeowners to the north. Gordon can speak to this. Well, Gordon, representing Aspen Homes, approached the mic, swore under oath, and said that he spoke to us about the new proposal, and that is simply not true. He said, we did have some offline discussions with them that were mutually beneficial. Progress is closing in around them, and they're thinking about moving on. Based on this testimony, it is hard to feel that our best interests as homeowners of this property for 17 years are going to be protected through this project when the builders have already lied under oath saying we agreed to the new rezoning proposal of R5. Next, Hillary stated through finding B11 that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic. And in the same context, she said that there would be 119 trips per day for the townhouses and 40 trips for the apartment complex. So that is 160, and those were not prime times. I leave at 7 a.m. I can't turn left onto 15th Street and then merge onto the exit 14. And so think about the added traffic coming and going on 15th Street, and how can the city possibly say that it's not going to impact traffic? There is currently no left turn lane, no room for it, and so how is that going to be developed? And yes, we've heard about projects for 15th Street up to Best, but yet there are no plans or dates for this project. Aspen's plans show adequate parking for residents, and yes, this is the case for Latitude's up the road 15th Street, which is also a project of theirs. But if you go by there, there are cars parked in the street now, and those impact the bike lane. And during snow season, when the plow comes down, how is a single entrance into this property, which they are proposing, going to work? Commissioner Fleming had concerns about this single entrance due to fires, and rightfully so, because there have been 2 fires on the hill since we have occupied our home. Safety should be paramount for this project. Further, there are 2 main services that provide essential services to our community, which will also be impacted. First, the fire station, and secondly, Avista Utilities, who already experiences difficulties turning out and onto 15th Street. A large housing development across from our city's primary utility company hardly seems logical. This type of mixed housing plan adds to the congestion in this area. So that brings forth the power poles and lines on the property and ours. We would like Aspen to address the plans for these. We are also concerned about the height of the properties and how it will affect our sunlight to our home and the yard. The original plans were 29 feet, and now they're at 38. That is simply too high and is not in keeping with the local neighborhood. We have mature trees along our property line and a massive ponderosa pine with tree roots that extend to the natural landscape. We're concerned about the impact and damage. The plans to propose a 10-foot setback with hemlock trees along our property line, we want Aspen to put up a fence, at least a 6-foot fence, to maintain our privacy and to stop residents and pets from wandering onto our 2 acres. We are wondering why Aspen's proposal includes 2 townhouses and 1 apartment complex with additional HOA fees. How does this meet the C13 goal of low-income housing opportunities for families? Could Aspen share the current cost to rent at Latitude so we're transparent about what is really happening? This development does not belong in an already busy area with traffic flowing from Cherry Hill Park, the Eagles Pavilion, Hayden, Dalton, Crestline, and downtown to exit 14. When the former mayor contacted us 2 years ago when he bought the property, he said he was going to involve us in the development of 3 single-dwelling homes. This we could accept, but a multi-unit structure in this area does not preserve the quality that makes Coeur d'Alene a great place to live, and is one of the city's goals to upkeep for residents. We hope the City Council will consider our concerns, requests, and needs through this development and postpone approving this project until some of our requests are addressed. We love our home, but not this project. I am a public service employee, and this is not how we envision our retirement home and property, and certainly not our 26th anniversary, which is today. And if I may, regarding the special events presentation earlier, if we support the downtown core foremost, and if the city would consider maintaining the bike lanes and add bike parking to the downtown core, locals could help with the parking problem. I just wanted to add that, because I was listening.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for
Thank you.
You have a question?
Yes, I do. Lynn?
Yes.
Is
Sorry, I'm very passionate, because I've been here before.
I love that. That's great. So we can only gather information at the hearing.
Yeah.
So this is something that I was curious about. Is there parking allowed on the east side of 15th in front of your house in the property to the south?
No, because there's a single lane, and then there's a bike lane. There's no parking.
No on-street parking?
Nope.
Where you live? Okay,
No.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Dobler, you're allowed a summary?
Rebuttal.
Well, here it's called a summation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, A lot of those issues were questioned by the Planning Commission with the PUD. So and I didn't get into the details because it's really not what we're here tonight, but we did cover landscaping that was required in the PUD. Access, one of the commissioners was concerned, but in the end, you have a single access, which is not uncommon. So that, and the fire department has approved that. We have an on-site turnaround, et cetera. The traffic, the staff report says, apartment and townhomes. I have to say, I'm not really sure why that designation is used, because townhomes to me implies a separate sellable piece, but that is not what we're doing. I think it has to do with the building construction, with common walls, et cetera. Not my expertise, but I can tell you that they're all apartments. The traffic staff report says, about 160 roughly cars a day, which is about 16 in the peak hour, maybe a little less, which is about 1 car every 3 minutes. 15th Street handles about 13 to 15,000 cars a day right now. So it may sound like a lot of traffic, but 15th Street has capacity to handle that. The ultimate design of 15th Street does have a left turn in the middle, but as the lady said, we've seen plans. We don't know when the construction of that is right now. Avista has a left turn pocket that goes into their project. There won't be any parking allowed on 15th Street, so that all of the parking's contained on the site. I think that's about it.
Question?
Go ahead.
Gordon, at the Planning Commission meeting, did you tell the planning commissioners that you had spoke with these people?
No, I never have.
What did you say at the Planning Commission regarding feedback from neighbors?
Nothing that I remember. I don't know that I've ever talked with the neighbors to the north about this project, if ever.
Thank you.
Woody?
So Gordon, is there wiggle room here? Would they want a fence and certain trees? Is that something you guys would maybe work on?
We have the trees in the PUD. It was actually Bill's suggestion. Wait, it'll come to me. He's not here.
How about the fencing?
Hemlock, that's what it is, because I remember it because it's like poison. But yeah, so we have hemlock trees, which exceeds the requirements for Planning Commission buffer. Fencing.
I'm trying to find you some flexi
I
here.
know. I don't know that I can stand here and commit to that. I don't.
We commit to fencing.
There you go. Yes, if you want to put it in the annexation agreement to require fencing along the north side.
But it's already in the PUD.
I don't know that fencing is in the PUD. It may or may not. Honestly, I don't remember.
It's not in the PUD. This is why I don't like PUDs, because we are approving something we cannot read.
Well, the PUDs don't come to the council.
I know.
Oh, well.
I don't like them.
You have a planning commission.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Okay, it is now up to the council. You have the proposal before you.
Close the testimony. Close the testimony.
I need to close the public hearing. Well, I thought I just said that, didn't I?
Did you? No, well, he just talked, so you need to close it, I think. We're not, where are we?
So you are in public testimony because the rebuttal would be part of that. So you could close public testimony unless you have others on your list.
I will close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve A2, 22A, proposed 5.9 acre annexation from County Ag to R5, applicant Aspen Homes and Development LLC, located at 1808 North 15th Street, to develop the necessary findings in order, and add that the hemlock trees and fencing would be put on the north side.
Actually, it'd probably be on the south side.
South side.
No, north side.
North.
Is it north?
That's right, north. To screen the neighbors.
Okay.
May
Yes. We need a second here before.
I'll second it,
Okay.
but can we add the recommendations for, we need to do that, add the recommendations from the planning department 1 through 13 in the annexation agreement?
Does the mover wish to add that?
Yes.
Good catch.
And the second,
Yes.
accepting that, okay? We have a motion before you. Discussion on the motion. Yes, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the big part of this is the PUD, and we don't see the PUD. They don't show it to us, and we can't, it's actually not even proper for us to ask questions. So burning question I would have would be on parking. 25 units to me would be a minimum of 50 spaces for cars, and I don't know if they're there or not. I actually don't, and they can't park on the street. So they probably approved the thing with substandard parking. I don't know, but we're not supposed to decide that. What it looks like to me is that this is, I mean, here we are 6 months after adopting the comprehensive plan and we're tossing it out the window. This is supposed to be a single-family neighborhood. I'd be okay with 2 or 3 homes. But I think what they did was they took a big piece of property and they took 1.3 acres of it to put on all the houses that would be fine on a big piece of property. So it's not an R5, it's more like an R32. And that is completely incompatible with what the comp plan says. And we have to be judgmental on this. It's a judicial hearing, quasi-judicial. And that's just too much density for that part of town. And so I can't support it. It's too high a density. I know we need the units, we need the housing, but no, it's just, to me, it's not kosher at all. So I can't support it, Mr. Mayor.
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to have to agree with Dan. The density is just too much. Even if it were 15 units, maybe that would be acceptable, but that's just too much density for a little over an acre. I like the single-family housing option too, but I understand when you're a developer, you're trying to get as much out of each inch of ground that you can. But I think in this case, there's just too much density on that little piece of ground.
Woody?
You know, when I first saw this, I thought it's a perfect place for density. It's up against a mountain. It's, 2 blocks from the freeway on-ramp. 15th Street's in the works. It's going to be widened. It's going to be fixed. So it made sense to me to densify where you can. I mean, it's one other home that's being impacted. It's up against a park, so they got to live with the noise and the fun of a park. Got a fire department right there. It seemed the water's good there. There's a tank right up the hill. I mean, if you don't want to put density into a neighborhood full of single-family homes or even density homes, it just seemed like it's pushed up out of the way, up against the mountain, and it's coming in from the county. So it wasn't like we planned it, it was just the way it was. So it's a little creative on the density side, but R5, I can't remember ever hearing about R5, you know? So I'm going to support it. I think the fencing and the neighbor, I get it. We all want to live in the country, but we're in the city. And I think this fixes it pretty well.
Seeing no further discussion, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Gookin?
No.
Sorry, got off schedule here. Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
No.
McEvers?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
No.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that there is no other business. This meeting should be adjourned.
Second that.
Motion is second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed with nay. Motion carries.
I just
We are
want
adjourned.
to say.